Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me? People in the back can hear me? Okay, good. I guess I have to talk really close into this thing. Thank you. I'd like to welcome you to the 2018 Corona del Mar Residents Association Election Forum. Like to see the turnout. Thank you so much for showing up. Can I see how many members that we have here? Can you raise your hand? Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. I love to see a great turnout. My name is Debbie Stevens. I am the president of this organization. I have been vice president for a number of years. I kind of prefer the behind the scenes work as opposed to in front of the camera work. But our past president stepped down to pursue other opportunities, so I stepped into the role. Yes, exactly. But anyway, I do welcome all of you here. Thank you for coming. Our organization was founded by a previous councilman who did not have a good source to go to find out what the concerns of the community were, what things we wanted to see go forward and that kind of stuff. And so he founded this organization in the early 1980s. So we've been around for about 32 years talking about and being involved with quality of life issues in the Corona del Mar area. Before I go any further, I do want to make a comment. We had asked if anybody has questions to hand them in, and if you would look towards the back, or actually the front of the room where the students are standing, and wave your hands. And if people could, if you have any questions, hand them over to them. We will collect them, and we will be reading some of them after some of the questions to the candidates. Basically, our goal for tonight is to provide a forum where voters can talk to candidates and find out about the measures that are going to be on the ballot. So we look at this as a chance to educate everybody and for you guys to become better voters, basically. Educated voters are more likely to vote. Our organization is a nonprofit organization, so we will not be making any endorsements or telling you how to vote on any measure. All of that is up to you. We think our membership is the best bargain around. Basically, it costs $20 to belong to our organization every year. So we really encourage your support and your membership. The more people we have, the more our voice counts when we do talk to our city council members. We do bring forward issues to the city. So we do encourage you to join our organization. Right now we're running a special. If you join it today or before October 1st, your membership is good through December of 2019. So back at the front where you registered when you came in, those people will help you if you're interested in joining. We do encourage it. When we do these kind of forums, there's a lot of people who participate, and so I do have a few people to thank. I'd like to thank our board members for helping me out and to come up with questions and kind of the format and all that kind of good stuff. I especially want to thank our election committee, which is Karen Tringali, Amy Sank, Sandy Haskell, Judy Bernstein, and Laura Curran. I do want to thank Laura Curran, one of our past presidents. It was Laura's idea to start involving students in these forums, and she did that a couple years ago, and I just thought it was such a good idea. We're going to do that, take that even a step further tonight. And then if those of you who know our organization knows that it probably wouldn't function without Karen Tringali, and I do mean that. But her efforts in getting our newsletter out, as well as some of our press releases and all that kind of good stuff, thank you. We appreciate that. I would also like to thank SPON and Dennis Baker for providing the videographer. That way everybody can see it. People who aren't here can see it at some time in the future. I'd like to thank the City of Newport. The City of Newport allows us to use this room when we do these kind of educational events, and I appreciate that. I would also like to thank Gallows in Corona del Mar for the sandwiches, Flora Botanica for the flowers, and Pete's Coffee. And then, of course, I'd also like to thank Liz Torelli for her great cookies. There you go, Liz. Way to go. So I understand that this is about, I thought this was the 6th or 7th forum. I've been told it's the 10th forum. So I kind of feel sorry for you guys now, but then, yes, and Diane just said they have 4 more to go. So anyway, I want to say thank you very much for coming. We get 7 out of 8 of you, and I'm very, very pleased that we can do this. I know that's 10 or so for you guys, but most of the people out here have not been to repeated forums, so we really do appreciate you coming into our part of the world and presenting your views and perspectives on the questions that we're going to ask you. So I would like to introduce our candidates, and that's starting with District 1. The incumbent is Diane Dixon, and the challenger is Mike Glenn. District 3, the incumbent is Marshall Duffield, and he is absent, but Tim Stokes' challenger is here. District 4, the incumbent is Kevin Muldoon, and the challenger is Roy Engelbrett. And District 6, which is Corona Del Mar, the incumbent is Scott Piotr, and the challenger is Joy Brenner. So again, thank you very much for being here. So having said that, they've gone through this over and over again. We kind of want to mix it up a little bit tonight. We hope it's going to be a little bit different. We decided to focus not just on what I call adult questions, but also what I would call student questions. What do our younger voters think is important to this community? And so we sat down and we met with the the Academy for Global Studies at Corona Del Mar High School, and their advisor teacher is Laura Mayberry, and I don't see her right now, but she's been in the back of the room, and we really appreciate Laura's help in bringing the students together, working with them, getting them organized, and from what I can tell, they appear to be very organized for tonight's event. Some of the questions have been developed by us, and some of the questions have been developed by them. Now, what I was really pleased with when I sat down and looked at these questions, you know, some of them, you couldn't tell who came up with them. You may think the adults came up with them, and frankly, some of those are the ones that the students actually came up with. So I do think they're going to tell you who came up with the questions, but nonetheless, I think you'll be very, very pleased with the questions that are brought to you, and I do think they'll be different. We do want to see what some of the younger voters think. And probably one of the things I'm most proud of is some of these people will be voting for the first time in November. So, you know, way to go. Thank you. The students, I'm going to introduce their names, but we have Gia Finir, Asher Green, Ethan Karazi, and Maggie Peach, and they're at the back of the room right now. And then you're going to hear from all of these students tonight at some point along the way, but the 2 people who are really going to moderate the event today is Sujata Tawari and Peter Larson. So having said that, guys ready? Are you guys ready? Okay, take it.
Hello, my name is Sujata. Thank you for coming this evening. We will begin the forum with opening statements from each of the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes. We will begin with the incumbent from District 1, Diane Dixon. Ms. Dixon?
Ready? All right. Are these on? Yes. Good evening and welcome. Thank you, Sujata and Peter, and thank you and welcome all the students, and welcome Corona Del Mar Residents Association. This is a great event. I did this 4 years ago, and when I was running for election, and I'm proud to be running for re-election. I am proud to represent all of you. That is what I am doing and have been doing for the last 4 years. I ran originally on a platform of fiscal discipline, transparency, and listening to the residents and business owners. And I am proud to run on that same record for the next 4 years and serve all of you. I'm very proud of a number of things. I chaired and served on and chaired the Finance Committee of the city. I'm here to tell you your city is strong. It is fiscally strong. We are in control of our great financial resources, and we are managing them well. Every year we submitted a balanced budget and created a surplus, held spending flat, held headcount flat, while keeping the level of programs and services that our citizens demand, require, and deserve. So I'm very pleased to talk to you about what we will do going forward for the next 4 years. I'm delighted to see your passion for our community. I share your passion. I've met all of you or most of you over the last 4 years at either my town halls. Many of you come to my town halls. I've had 21 town halls over in the peninsula, as well as the hundreds of events, and we've met thousands of people. You are all terrifically interested and concerned residents, and I'm here to serve you and talk about what we're going to do going forward. So thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now from the District 1 challenger, Mr. Glenn.
Hi, I am Mike Glenn, a resident of Balboa Peninsula. I'm challenging Diane Dixon on her record. But before I go on any of that, I want to thank everybody here, truthfully. Without you guys taking a real, true interest in our local elections, what we would be left with is people that are voting on mailers. And I thank you guys for showing up. I know you're the people that everybody asks, who should I vote for? And I appreciate you paying attention here very, very, very much. But I'm running against Diane based on her record. There's a lot to cover there. I've printed it out. Everybody should have had one of these on their seats. It's front and back. It's all her record. You know, the city, we've dropped $70 million more into debt since in the last 4 years. We've had tax increases and spending increases. It's not being managed fiscally well. There's an entire side here of listing the residents, transparency. There's another big section in there. I'm running against her record. There's no need to get personal on this. It's just her record. I've been asked, and I will respect it, not to put my Save Dog Beach hat out on the table, but I am also leaving the charge to Save Dog Beach. I know Diane's been trying to get rid of that, but you can find more about me on my website, savenewport.com. I've been running it for about the last 6 years, doing an article just about every day on there in regards to our city. But again, I appreciate everybody out here, your attendance, and I'm thankful for your caring about the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to District 3. Since Mr. Duffield cannot be here, we'll move on to the challenger, Mr. Stokes.
Good evening. My name's Tim Stokes, and I love this city. But I think, like you, we're not going in the right direction, and I think we can do better. I think a good example of doing better, it says a lot that my opponent isn't even showing up to most every forum. That says volumes. That's a respect issue to you. And I was just trying to think what I would tell my 21-year-old daughter. I'm thinking, these guys that are helping us tonight, moderator, high school students, how do you explain to your high school student, if you want to become a council member, you have to show up and you have to be responsible and you have to be respectful to the residents that are in your city? First of all, just bad behavior. How do you explain that to a high school student who wants to run for council but doesn't show up? It's a mystery to me. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I serve on many committees in Newport Beach, Airfare, Line in the Sand, Newport Harbor Educational Foundation. I got to do this wonderful facility called the Building Oasis. We fundraised for the public-private partnership for this community facility for our seniors and those programs. I recently president of the Newport Beach Friends of Newport Beach Animal Shelter, so I'm a very busy guy. This campaign, we're working around the clock. It's just get it done sort of effort. I appreciate all the people that have helped me through the many months and days, and we've got 40-some days to go, so I very much appreciate that. Tonight, I hope we get to discuss some of the issues that are very important to residents. Ethics and transparency back to our government, controlling the John Wayne Airport, noise and pollution.
Thank you. Now moving on to District 4, we'll hear from incumbent Mr. Muldoon.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. A special thanks to the Colonel Del Mar Residents Association Board for putting this together. And for our high school moderators, as a recent graduate of high school, I appreciate your participation. I'm very pleased to be with you here tonight. A couple of things that I've tried to do while in my first tenure here in City Council is focus on paying down the unfunded pension liability. Now, the prior council had the same issue because the CalPERS trustees have not invested our money wisely. They're starting to invest it more wisely, but in the meantime, we're doing everything we can to take our extra reserves and constantly apply them towards that unfunded pension liability so that future generations don't have to worry about a default situation like so many other cities in the state of California are actually facing. Proud to work with the police department who has supported me in this race to have the lowest crime rates in the last couple years. We're 12% below last year's crime rates. Now, for many, it feels like crime is higher. I believe there are two reasons. One, some of these criminals are getting more brazen because of Prop 57, Prop 47, and early release programs coming out of Sacramento that are laying these criminals back on the street prematurely. It is a serious problem. As a former prosecutor, I want to continue to work on these public safety issues. And lastly, John Wayne. I'm doing everything I can, along with Councilman Jeff Herdman, who's also in the audience, and Councilwoman Diane Dixon, to work with the community groups to get the airplanes to leave at a higher altitude sooner, leaving John Wayne so there's less noise and air pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for the challenger from District 4, Mr. Engelbrecht.
Why am I running for City Council? It would be silly for me to spend 2 minutes going through political talk. I'm going to ask you 4 questions why I'm running for City Council. So, by a show of hands, do you agree that the way the current City Council compelled our outstanding city manager, Dave Kiff, to retire early was classless and outrageous? By a show of hands. That's why I'm running. 2, by a show of hands, do you agree that the current City Council tried to circumvent the city's general plan and ram the Museum House development through? By a show of hands, do you agree? That's why I'm running for City Council. 3, by a show of hands, do you agree that the way the current City Council conducted the search for a new city manager was secretive and unprofessional? If you believe that, show me your hands. That's why I'm running for City Council. And finally, by the show of hands, do you agree that the tone of discourse in our city has changed for the worst, and that some City Council members seek to demonize city employees and even to citizens of Newport Beach? If you agree, let me see your hands. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why I'm running for City Council.
Thank you. Moving on to District 6, we will hear from incumbent Mr. Piotr.
Thank you. My name is Scott Piotr. I have had the privilege of representing Corona Del Mar for the last 4 years. And I just want to say something about CDMRA. I've been attending their monthly meetings for now almost 6 years. And there really is no better place to get a good pulse on what the community and CDM really wants and what they're really thinking about. I think that when we ran in 2014, there was the previous council, frankly, had overstepped their bounds. They had overspent on what I refer to as the Taj Mahal City Hall, including our nice white bunnies, and they had basically run amok as far as spending. I think we came in, we put wood back into the fireplaces on the beach, we cut the dock tax. We held our expenses in the city so that even though cost of living has gone up, the budget stayed less than the cost of living. We audited the city hall, and we've been paying down debt, as Mr. Muldoon has said, to the tune of almost $20 million a year extra to try and catch up because we were left in a hole from the previous councils, both with $130 million debt on the Taj Mahal City Hall and now about $320 million in unfunded pension liabilities. We don't need to pass that on to future generations. We're dealing with it now. And that's what I feel that we were elected to do, is to come in and cut government and streamline it, basically make it invisible until you need it. And I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear from challenger Ms. Brenner.
Hi, I'm Joy Brenner, and I am thrilled to see this room filled tonight. I was one of the founders with Phil Sansone of this association 32 years ago, and Phil is really my role model in how I plan to serve this community. It's all about listening to our residents. I have told this council many, many times at city council meetings that their job is to represent us. They have been pushing, my opponent specifically, has been pushing his own partisan agenda, and he doesn't listen to what we as residents want in our community. We have a system in our city where we have boards, commissions, and committees at the lower level, and their job is to get input from all of our citizens and then make a recommendation to the city council as to what the residents really want. The city council's job is to vote the will of the people. We have had so many instances where we go down there, we talk to them, their eyes glaze over. They seem to care less what we have to say as a community, and the Museum House was a perfect example of that. When people ask me why I'm running for city council, I often say it's because I'm tired of standing in front of supermarkets getting signatures on petitions. It's just not an effective way of government. So my goal is to revitalize our boards and our commissions, get our people involved, help everyone to know that our opinions really do matter and that this council is going to vote the will of the people.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brenner. We will now transition into a series of 5 yes or no questions. Each candidate has a paddle with yes and no indicated on either side. Candidates, please use the paddle to indicate your response. First question. Would you support building a new police station? Please indicate with your paddles. Station. Please station. Okay, headquarters. Yes or no? Second question. Do you support adding more police to Newport Beach? Yes or no? Have you thought about or are you planning to run for other elected positions or higher office? Thank you. Do you own a home in which you currently live? Do you own a home in which you currently live? Thank you. Do you support Measure T on the November ballot? No. Thank you very much. We will now proceed to ask some open-ended questions. The first open-ended question. Concerns about crimes such as burglaries and robberies have been expressed in our community and specifically in CDM. At a recent Residents Association meeting, over 200 people came to hear the Newport Beach Police Department speak on crime statistics and prevention in our community. Do you have concerns about crime in our community, and, if so, how would you approach the problem if elected? We'll begin with District 6, the incumbent, Mr. Piotr, then on to the challenger.
You get to go first. All right, you heard Mr. Muldoon, former prosecutor, talk about our crime statistics. In Newport Beach, our overall crime statistics in almost every category have gone down about 15% this last year compared to the year before. Now, there's a couple of things that are happening. Property crimes have gone down, and a lot of that, by the way, has to do with the fact that we're starting to lock our cars and lock our houses because a lot of these guys are crimes of opportunity because of these, we call it catch and release programs, Prop 47, and all these criminals that are being released quickly, or they catch them and then release them immediately. They're going around checking doors. If your door is unlocked in your car, they're going to rifle through it and take stuff. The other side of it, too, is that we are much better informed through Nextdoor. A lot of us are on Nextdoor. So now we're hearing about a lot of the things that are going on, which is good because now that we're going to be able to come together and remind each other that we need to do something about it, lock our houses, lock our cars, and not give them an opportunity.
Thank you. We will now hear from Ms. Brenner.
The problem is that these are not all crimes of opportunity. We're having much more aggressive burglars, and we're having people who smash windows, we're having people who break into doors, we're having people who enter homes when there are people there. So they say the statistics are down, but I think we all know we still have a serious problem. And when I organized that meeting of 200 people here, it was interesting because afterwards we had a great turnout. People were very interested and engaged in what they can all do to help, and it's really a matter of community helping each other. But one of Scott's supporters criticized me in the paper, saying that I was trying to make crime an issue in the campaign. Well, I don't think I have to try to make crime an issue in this campaign. We all know that we have to do something about it. We have to be vigilant, and we have to work together.
Thank you. We will now move to District 1. Ms. Dixon, you have a minute.
Well, first of all, let me say we have an outstanding police department in the city of Newport Beach, and if any of you have encountered them for one reason or another, I believe you have hopefully had a good experience because they're outstanding men and women in our police department. I represent District 1, which is the Balboa Peninsula, and that's historically been the highest crime area of our community. There is crime, evidence of crime elsewhere. My first year in office, we did restore 4 of the 8 police officers that were cut during the recession. The residents were extremely grateful because we have high incidence of drug, alcohol, and DUI issues, and the enforcement of crime and prevention of crime is really critical on the peninsula, as it is in your district. And so our police are listening to where the needs are. In addition to property-related crime, what I'm hearing, and this goes around the whole city, people, for whatever reason, may inadvertently be leaving their garage doors open, so the crimes of opportunity are actually through their garages. So anyway, we need to all be vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. We'll now hear from the challenger, Mr. Glenn.
Hi, Mike Glenn. I actually pulled the numbers on this yesterday. I run a software development company, and I've been logging the police crime statistics for the last many years. Crime is actually up. It was down last year. It's up this year, and we all see it. I mean, we had the DA arrest the couple out on Balboa Peninsula that are accused of brutally assaulting, the DA says, possibly 1,000 people. The crime is up this year, and I know that they're going to be campaigning on the crime being down last year, but it's not holding. Crime is up. And I'll be publishing that on savenewport.com along with all of the numbers and references tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the challenger from District 3, Mr. Stokes.
Well, as we start reading Tom Johnson's Stu News, you see the police block gets bigger and bigger as we read the information on the police department. So that's how I know the issue is coming up. It's being reported more. The police has this great thing called Nextel that communicate to us via the cell phone, those types of things. So we're seeing more information about what types of things are happening in our communities. West Santa Ana Heights, we have homes that get burglarized in the middle of the night, absentee folks. The burglars leave about 2 minutes. The alarms don't go off, and things are not effective. The best thing to do, we've been told, and thank you, Joy, for that wonderful community meeting. I learned that videotaping folks from simple devices such as Ring are the best deterrent to this type of crime and whatnot.
Thank you. Now for District 4, Mr. Muldoon.
Thank you. Yep, I believe this is actually one of the most important issues. I consistently say so. What I enjoy about being a former prosecutor and knowing some of these police officers firsthand from pre-trials or other motions is that I can talk to them on a regular basis and say, what's your feel for the street? Because it matters. Sometimes the commanders and the captains and the chief have a different opinion than the rank and file. I'm happy to have supported the increase of officers on the peninsula, which Diane led. And one reason why that's good for you is because that allows them all to shift towards your direction. I anticipate, this has been a great year for crime under last year, but I anticipate that if there is an increase, supporting more police officers, perhaps providing some people from natural retirement, not filling those vacancies at City Hall, and instead hiring a couple more armed police officers to protect our streets.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Engelbrecht.
I kind of look at this as earthquake preparedness. We all know we're going to have a big earthquake, but how many of us have actually prepared for it? And it's the same way with burglaries in our city. We know that there are people who want to rob and steal in our city, so we all have to have personal responsibility and make sure that we lock our doors. If we're going to leave our windows open, that we put something in the window so it can't be opened. The police are doing a wonderful job in our community, but all of us need to make more of an effort to take responsibility for our home.
Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. For the next question, there have been a number of proposed developments in the city that have generated controversy recently, including the Museum House, Newport Villas, Cole Center, and several other multifamily dwelling unit developments near the airport. What is your approach to approving new developments in the city, and what priorities and revisions would you consider in updating the general plan? We will begin with District 1, Mr. Glenn.
Hi, Mike Glenn. We've got a couple of documents that govern how we bill here in the city. We've got a general plan, and we also have green light. We're in a position right now where City Council makes exceptions to the general plan, and it's not everybody that gets them. And a lot of times you'll find those names on their donor list. I'm not in favor of doing exceptions to the general plan. If it needs to be modified, we should modify it. If it's in the general plan, I think you ought to be able to build it. But when my opponent voted to make people carry around that thick stack of papers to oppose the museum house, that was absolutely intolerable. The general plan needs to be updated, and it needs to be followed. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from the incumbent, Ms. Dixon.
Thank you. We are going to be going, I supported advancing to next year now. I supported doing it this year, the update to our general plan. Our general plan was passed by the voters in 2006. A lot has changed in those 18 years, or 12 years, I guess it is, and it's time, actually the process started well before then, about 18 years ago. New technologies, new smart technologies, new modes of transportation. Traffic is a significant issue from wherever it's coming and why it's coming. We know we have traffic on our major highways and arterials. We need to address it. The general plan process that will begin next year is something all of you can get involved with. It requires active citizen engagement because what's happened with the 2006 plan, things have been built, developments have occurred, and people go, where did they come from? But they were approved in the general plan. I agree, once we have a general plan, we should stick with the general plan, and variances and exceptions have become very problematic in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to District 3 with Mr. Stokes.
I think the general plan update is probably one of the most critical pieces of resident-driven based documents that is coming true. As I was thinking, are we ready, as it's the blueprint for the next 10 years of growth for Newport Beach. As we all know, Team Newport voted for the 295-foot museum house tower. Are we ready to let those folks control our general plan update? In my opinion, is no. These folks have already decided that high-density residential on our harbors and our islands and our airport areas is the way that they want to go. So they've already spoken volumes as to what direction they want to go. I, on the other hand, carried a petition in front of Irvine Ranch Market with Tammy Watt. We were out with flashlights collecting signatures. So I'm kind of on the side of let's get the updated general plan going and have all residents go into that.
Thank you. For District 4, we'll hear from Mr. Engelbrecht.
This is one of the reasons I'm running. Do you know we have billion-dollar pieces of art in our community? Those pieces of art are our views, the reason that we live in this community. These are billion-dollar views, and past councils and current councils are giving our views away. Have you looked on Ocean Boulevard or Carnation? You used to be able to drive Ocean Boulevard, Carnation, and see the rest of the harbor. Gone. How about San Joaquin Hills coming from MacArthur towards Jamboree. You used to be able, after Newport Center, you could look out and see Palos Verdes. Now there's Villas Fashion Island. That billion-dollar view is gone. We cannot continue to give away our views, or we're just going to be your Belinda.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Mr. Muldoon.
I think Yorba Linda's a great town, home of Richard Nixon. But I think that we got to. True, that's very true. The view's not good. I think we have to balance the interest here. There are a couple of places that I think need protection specifically from the general plan, so a zone change can occur. One example is in my district, Newport Beach Tennis Club. It's a very special place for a lot of families, whether you're playing tennis or taking your children to the pool. When there's a rumor that someone wanted to buy this property and do high-density development, I did what I quickly could to make it clear that we're going to protect the zoning. Those in St. James by Alito, which we also moved to protect, the church, those are things that we need to sacredly protect, zoning and aesthetics and the community feel. At the same time, we have to balance the interests of the real property owners. Thank you.
Thank you. From District 6, we'll hear from Ms. Brenner.
The general plan update is critical, and I've been working with a committee, and we've probably had 4 or 5 meetings already on this, where they are doing the research within the community to find out what the people think the problem areas are, where they think changes need to be made, and they've been inviting speakers in from other areas to talk about data-driven government and artificial intelligence, things that we really know in order to make sure that our community thrives and grows in a reasonable manner. I am not against development, I'm against overdevelopment, and I believe that we need to work with the developers to come up with projects that are an enhancement to our community and not things that create more traffic and create problems for the rest of us.
You know, property rights are important. It's just like if you go play baseball and all of a sudden you're up at the plate and they call you out after 2 strikes, you're going to be a little upset. We've got a set of rules. We've got the general plan. And if someone complies with that, and Ms. Skinner's been holding up her 13-pound petition, the developer spent $3+ million putting all that documentation together and showed how he complied with the rules. I supported the project. I think the system worked. You had residents that went out and collected signatures. It got revoked. That's the way the system's designed. What is more concerning is I sit there and hear Joy talk about, hey, I'm a pro-property rights guy, but she's only opposed projects. She's never come out and supported a project. She's opposing single-family residences now. It's kind of like, well, you know, what's next? My house? Your house? You know, you've got a set of rules that we've all agreed on, and it's our job to make sure they comply with the rules. And they comply with the rules, the property owners do have rights. That's why they call it property rights.
Thank you. The third question. The city has a number of commissions with expertise in specific subjects making recommendations to the city council. For example, harbor, planning, finance, parks, beaches, recreation, as well as arts. Are these commissions important to decision-making for the council? How would you use these commissions if you are elected or re-elected? And in what circumstances would you avoid seeking the opinion of these commissions? We'll start with District 3, Mr. Stokes.
Is it 1 minute still?
1 minute.
Okay. I think our commissions are being shorted. They simply don't get listened to at the, thank you for telling me to stand up. I'm sorry, you guys. Yeah. Not a polished politician here, excuse me. We need to count on the talent in our community, and that's at a community level, you know, different community groups as well as our commissions and those types of organizations within our city. But it starts with the community groups and then goes to the commission level, and then the council should be a non-event, in my opinion. It should have great resident input at a committee level and just basically be very simple in that fashion. Just that's as simple as I know. We have to encourage good people to be on these commissions that have institutional knowledge in the city. We also encourage the next generation of people coming up. We need the fresh groups of people coming in that are younger and have energy.
Thank you. Next to District 4, Mr. Muldoon.
It slips my mind right now, but I know one president of the United States would have a sign in front of their desk, the West Wing, and an Oval Office that would say, "The buck stops here." And was that Truman? Thank you. It's history buff Diane. And I think that's really important because we are accountable to the people. And if I have not done a good job, I fully expect for Roy to beat me for re-election. And I think that kind of accountability benefits all of us. Now, these commissions and committees, they're subject matter experts. Paul Blank's got a smile on over there. The Harbor Commission dives into stuff. I'm thinking of actually something in particular they dive into that I don't want to touch. I mean, that's their job, their passion. They're going to hand us something that they put a lot of time and thought in. And unless I hear from a particular set of residents that are really concerned, or I have something that conflicts with my personal philosophy and how government should be, I'm going to support it. So I think it's a great system that not a lot of cities have. It's hyperactivity, involvement in this community, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Engelbrecht?
Well, I've been fortunate to serve on the Park Beach Recreation PB&R Commission 3 times, and there are such smart people on those commissions. That was kind of a joke because I serve on it. I went over everybody's head. Let me tell you about the commissions. The commissions just make recommendations to the city council. I said this 4 years ago when I ran. The problem we have some of the smartest people on these commissions, and we're not utilizing their expertise, their wisdom, their passion for our city. If I'm elected to the city council, I will look with our city attorney how we can make these commissions more of a governing body to not just meet once a month and make recommendations. Be more actively involved, because we have a great brain trust in this town that we're underutilizing.
Thank you, Mr. Engelbrecht. On to District 6, Mr. Piotr.
Yeah, I had the privilege of serving on the Planning Commission for 4 years before joining the City Council. The Planning Commission is really the only body that is required by law. The state law requires it. The rest of the commissions are either by charter or by council resolution. And as you've heard already, we get a lot of people. Planning Commission was no exception. We have talented guys. We have such a talented population here in Newport Beach with expertise in different areas. The Planning Commission, for instance, had architects, developers, real estate guys, structural engineers, planners. All of them were able to give their expertise and lend it. And I know that as a councilman, I listen directly to those people. And like Mr. Muldoon said, unless it conflicts with my philosophy of government, those are the subject matter experts. I rely on them.
Thank you. Ms. Brenner?
That's the problem, is the people that we put on those commissions do give us their opinion, but if we're planting that commission and filling it with developers and architects and people who are pro-development, then they're going to make the recommendations to the council that the council can then say, oh, well, the people voted for this. This is what the people want. It's the job of the commissions and the boards to figure out what the rest of the community wants, not just what they want. And when I was chair of the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission, we were charged with redeveloping Inspiration Point. Our commissioners walked the community and passed out postcards. We had a public hearing down at City Hall, and we had such buy-in. We had such a good project at the end that when we went to City Council, there was not one objection to that project, and everybody was there in support because we had done due diligence as far as getting out and talking to the people and finding out what the people wanted. That's how the boards and commissions are really supposed to work.
Thank you. Next to District 1, Ms. Dixon.
I love this question because I see the true passion and commitment of our residents who serve our community, and serving on council-appointed boards and commissions is a subject dear to my heart. When I first got on the city council, I realized that there was a very thin stack of applicants to serve on council-appointed boards and commissions. And furthermore, I will say this, addressing the women of all ages in our community, it was 80% men who had applied and less than 20% women who applied to serve on our commissions. I've made it a personal cause of mine to encourage women, young women, who are interested in our community, and many of you students, I encourage you as well to apply to serve on our committees and commissions, because now we've shifted the balance to it's about 60-40, and it's really well represented. I will say, as chairing the Finance Committee, we have 3 public members and 4 public members, and they absolutely make a difference. The chair, one of the public members, just this last Tuesday's recommendations on revisions to our reserve policy authored those revisions. It is fundamentally a great opportunity to get involved in our community. I encourage it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Thank you. We'll now move on to Mr. Glenn.
Hi, Mike Glenn. I think Roy and Joy nailed it with this. We've got great people on our commissions and qualified people, but they've been becoming politicized as well. For instance, during the whole Dog Beach thing, when Diane was trying to shut down the Dog Beach, the Parks, Beach, and Rec with Roy, thank you, Roy, all unanimously voted to save Dog Beach. Then we got a new appointment, which was a person that was fined $225,000 by the California Coastal Commission for bulldozing and destroying the Dog Beach, or the beach in front of his house. That'd be like appointing somebody to the Harbor Commission that had just dumped 220,000 gallons of chemicals into the harbor. Now, this person also, since it was a criminal act, reimbursed the Newport Beach Police Department for their expenses, and he was never charged because he was politically connected. Those types of things, where the qualification is how close you are to the council member who wants your view to be heard, are not the types of things we should be doing on commissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. For the next question, homelessness has become a big issue recently, in part due to the closure of tent sites along the Santa Ana River and adjacent to county offices in Santa Ana. Homeless individuals are becoming common in some of our shopping centers and other public spaces. What is your approach to improving the homeless situation in Newport Beach? Additionally, what is our city's role in working with the county on this issue? We'll begin with District 4, Mr. Engelbrecht.
An issue that is impacting all of us. I have great respect for Dave Kiff, our former city manager. I met with Dave on Friday, this past Friday. Dave is now the interim CEO of the Association of California Cities for Orange County. Dave has a passion to address this homeless situation. We need to work with a person like Dave Kiff, who has a feel for this problem, feel for Newport Beach. It is not going away. This should have been addressed 20 years ago. It wasn't, and here we are today. But we have good people working. We have a full-time police officer who addresses that. But you know what? We need to look to our county and to Dave Kiff to give us some recommendations. He's a smart man.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Mr. Muldoon.
Thank you. When Federal Judge Carter basically enjoined all the cities and brought him in to his courtroom, I called city managers throughout the county and said, you need a solution. Many people who are policy trend leaders here in Orange County started scratching their heads thinking how they could solve this. They looked at some potential like bonding opportunities, but I think ultimately they decided to try to release funds that are stuck in Sacramento that they would be entitled to anyways. We send a lot of money to Sacramento. We don't always get our money back. Sometimes when we do, there are strings attached. We're going to have to, under the court order, come up with some funding, which we're working on right now. And some communities that have the space are going to have to do some housing. We have a very nice project for homeless veterans that does wraparound county resources. So it's not a homeless person simply moving in. It's a homeless person who has extra resources for the sake of sobriety, mental and physical health. So that unit is over in West Newport. It's a dozen units. It's a beautiful project. We took housing funds that had to be put to something to that project. That's the kind of stuff that the judge is going to say, okay, Newport Beach is doing their part, and look at the next city. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from District 6, Ms. Brenner.
I know that we are working with a coalition of Orange County cities. Diane has told me all about this. I believe you're working on that, aren't you? And it makes a lot of sense because we in Newport Beach could take a piece of property and develop a homeless site, and we could maybe take care of 20 homeless people. But if we collaborate with other cities, we can help to develop other properties where possibly the same amount of money could go in and provide housing for 100 homeless people. So it's not the NIMBY thing that people talk about, not in my backyard. It's a matter of we want to be able to help as many of the homeless as possible, and we need to do it in the humane way that we have been doing that with our officer from the police department, Tony Yim, who's getting to know every one of those homeless people in Newport Beach personally, figuring out who needs mental help, who needs assistance reconnecting with families, who can approach it from a personal standpoint with those people, and I think we're doing a good job there, and we're going to do a better job.
Thank you. Mr. Piotr?
So you've already heard we've got a police officer dedicated to this. You know, we got hit when the county's camps closed because the county turned a blind eye to this, like Roy was saying, for 10 years. And so they got dispersed all over the county. So in case you hadn't noticed, around Corona del Mar, we have a whole lot more homeless. Again, as Mr. Muldoon said, we've got a transitional housing over in West Newport for veterans. We're participating. Mr. Morlock has passed, I think it was SB 463, which is going to allow us to put a trust fund together from all the cities in Orange County to help. But I'd like to see something different. Government can maybe provide a meal, but I'd like to see the churches get more involved. Churches have the ability to go in there and help that guy or woman and change their heart and help them get off the street, whereas government tends to only provide that meal, and then the guy's got to be, he's going to be hungry again, right? The old give him a fish he eats for the day, teach him the fish he eats for a lifetime. So I'd like to see the churches as part of the solution.
Thank you. Now from District 1, Mr. Glenn.
I actually agree with everybody up here so far. I would like to touch on something that Roy brought up, though. It was the position of City Council that our city manager, Dave Kiff, was retiring, and that he was going to be moving up north. Now, part of his contract said that he couldn't talk badly about the city. But instead of retiring and moving up north, he took on another role with another government agency. I think that speaks volumes. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Ms. Dixon.
Okay, thank you. As Joy mentioned, I'm on the board and the executive committee of the Associated Cities of Orange County, and I'm responsible for Dave Kiff being part of it. It's not a public agency. It is a nonprofit agency, and it's a coalition of 34 cities. The 34 cities of Orange County have banded together, sponsored the legislation, AB 448, which was passed unanimously by both houses, amazingly, both houses in Sacramento, and signed by the governor. It was really on a fast track. What it does is go after available state and federal funds that each individual city and all across California were fighting after. Now we're coalescing around the funds and trying to solve the problem holistically in Orange County. We have a short, medium, and long-term plan. The short-term plan in Newport Beach, Tony Yim, I call it one homeless at a time. He has a personal relationship with each of the homeless. Our homeless count, because of the river situation, has gone up. He's working with them. We're transitioning them to transitional housing and then to permanent housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from District 3, Mr. Stokes.
I think homeless is more than just a house. It has been explained to me. You find the unit or the housing when people go into it, but it's also about stabilizing that homeless person. It's the continual paying attention to that person by the stabilization. Newport Beach may not be the community in which we build homes for the housing, but it may be the community in which we employ some homeless folks. It may be a creative idea. It may just be too expensive to live in our community for a homeless person to sustain here. It's just as simple as that. Newport Beach does its fair share of other things as well. It's not like we're just shorting our issues. We take the Blythe of the airport every day. We take most of that, the rest of the county doesn't. So it's about maybe doing something different with our community and developing a more creative way of spending money to help stabilize those types of individuals and families. Take a better approach at taking on families than maybe single parent families, the veterans and whatnot. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. We will now transition to a second round of yes or no questions. Candidates, will you please pick up your paddles? Do you think the city's campaign financing laws should be reformed? Is enough being done to address sea level rise? Is enough being done to address sea level rise? Sea level rise. Do you support marijuana dispensaries in Newport Beach?
Not storefronts, but I do believe that delivery services will remove the ability.
Are you satisfied with the existing measures taken to improve parking availability on the Balboa Peninsula? Are you satisfied with the existing measures taken to improve parking availability on the Balboa Peninsula? Have you served on any of the city commissions or boards? Have you lived in the district that you represent or plan to represent for the last 5 years? Are you happy with the change in city managers?
Thank you. Next, we have a series of open-ended questions that have been gathered from the younger members of our community. The following questions are from members of the Academy of Global Studies who will be voting in the upcoming election.
Hello, my name is Ethan Karazi. I'm a senior at Corona Del Mar High School, and I'll be voting in the upcoming election. My question is, if elected, how will you strive to best represent your constituency? And is there a certain issue that concerns you most, and how would you go about addressing it?
Thank you, Ethan. We'll now start with District 6, Ms. Brenner.
The biggest issue, as far as I'm concerned, is lack of transparency at City Hall. There have been so many things happening in the last 3.5 years that we have struggled to get the information from them that should have been public information. The public's business is supposed to be conducted in the public, and that's going to be one of my first actions, is to make sure that we bring everything to the light so that we know what we're dealing with.
So part of your question is, how are we going to listen to our constituency? It's important to listen to our constituency. I've been accused of not listening. You know, it isn't, we live in a representative government, and so it's not like you can take a poll before you vote on every single issue. As you can see, Ms. Skinner's 13-pound book, that was part of what we had to read in the staff report on that project. It's impossible for everybody to be expected to read that. When you sit there and say, gee, I'm going to listen, I take that as I'm putting my finger in the wind, finding out which way the wind blows, and I'm going to jump in front and lead. You know, I call that leading from behind. And I think it's important that we step out on what we believe and take the city where we need it to go. And one of the things that we got elected on 4 years ago, and it's one of the things that still hasn't changed a whole lot, is we are buried in debt. So the challenge is to keep government at a limited level and pay down our debt as soon as possible.
Thank you. Next to District 1, Mr. Glenn.
Hi, Mike Glenn. That 13 pounds, that's ridiculous. That's not listening to the residents. Our biggest problem we have as a city is our unfunded pension liability. In the last 4 years, we've gone backwards on that to the tune of $70 million. We've had an increase in taxes, an increase in spending. We've got crony deals in here that I've outlined. I mean, we've got the Balboa Peninsula Theater. It sold for $1.1 million when we had it bids out for 1.6, 1.7. The Balboa, the Blockbuster out there sold and demolished for $10.5 million for parking spots. We lost 2 parking spots in the process. That was also bought for 3 times what the county assessor said it was worth. The McDonald's that the city just purchased for more than double what their friends purchased it for less than 18 months prior. These are all things that impact your pocketbook. The transparency that's going on in the government is virtually, I'm not going to say it's non-existent, but it needs a lot of work.
Thank you, Mr. Glenn. Ms. Dixon?
Yes, thank you. I don't want to use up my whole minute refuting his falsehoods, but first of all, taxes have not increased in Newport Beach, and I can't address all the other things because they're not true. The most important issue is our unfunded pension liability. I will say that we have been working, every year we take a significant portion of our surplus, and we pay down more. It's like prepaying our mortgage. And we are on now a 15-year. Most cities are on a 25 or 30-year pay down. We're on a 15-year because we're paying it down quickly. I've listened to my residents and to the constituents and all residents because I've had 21 town halls. That is where my policy ideas come from. That's where I sense what's important to all of you. I listen to all of you. The ideas bubble up from the people, and I carry what concerns you forward to making policy. So I will continue to have, I've had 21 town halls, and I will continue to do that because it's the most valuable thing I do to learn from all of the people what's important to them. And so I will continue to do that and help pay down our pension. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to District 3, Mr. Stokes.
I think tonight the absence of my opponent speaks volumes. He doesn't respect our residents. He doesn't think he has to come up and talk about issues in front of you. He's just going to stay away and then hit me with hit pieces in mail. So we can all look forward to the mailbox being full. So I think that's the first. It's the behavior of our council. It matters to me most, that you find respect, you find folks that really want to participate in our government. And then we have 7 individual people, not a block of people, not a Team Newport.
Thank you. Next to District 4, Mr. Engelbrecht.
I have trained my son for the last 10 years along with our staff in the fight promotions business, and I committed to them that if I was elected on November 6th, what I would give this position my full-time dedication and passion. So today, September 26, 2018, I commit to every person in this room that would not only work full-time for District 4, but for every single resident in Newport Beach.
Thank you. Mr. Muldoon?
I think the most important issue in our community is public safety. And I think it's a fundamental human right that you can feel safe in your own home, that your children feel safe, and that's the thing that matters most to me. And it's what I went to law school for, and what I did after law school, and it's what I want to do, continue to do in Newport Beach, is continue to work with law enforcement, the community, to keep crime as low as possible. Because quite frankly, everything Sacramento is doing is not to our benefit. They've dissolved the bail system. You want change in Sacramento, you want criminals not out there, child molesters and murderers, you need to take it to the Hill. The Hill is a term for Sacramento. So between early bail and early release and no bail system and the pardons that the governor is doing, something's got to stop. And I hope that people start looking out for the victims, not the predators.
Thank you, Mr. Muldoon. For the next question.
Hello, my name is Asher Green, and I am a junior at Corona Del Mar High School. Students feel disconnected with local, state, and federal governments today. According to governing.com, a study conducted by Portland State University tallied voter turnout in the most recent mayoral elections in the 30 largest cities. It found that 65 years and older were about 7 times more likely to vote than those ages 18 to 34. If elected, what would you do to improve voter turnout and efficacy of young voters in our area?
We'll begin with District 1, Ms. Dixon.
Well, I think that is an important issue, a very important issue. We need to keep the high voting participation that we do enjoy in Newport Beach. I think Newport Beach enjoys one of the highest voting participation rates in the state. But for the young people, that is absolutely important. I think there's certainly voter registration is made much easier now. You could even register to vote at the DMV upon renewing your driver's license, although they had a little bug in their computer recently, but the principle is still valid. But we do want to encourage people to register to vote and to allow our young people to realize that they do have a voice and participate, just like you're participating, to encourage the interest in our local government, because local government is where it is happening. You can't go to Washington, Sacramento easily, but you could come to city council, come to our boards and commissions, and get involved in the city, and you will have ownership in the issues that come before you, and you will be interested in voting and expressing your policy beliefs that way. I encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glenn?
I think the language needs to change. The reach out can way to communicate with people. I think I've at least tried to do a good job putting it on Facebook and Twitter and things and email, things that younger people typically use. And I hope I've been able to reach out to some of the younger generation on that. But the language needs to change too. It's plain English terms. When there was a proposal to steal property rights on Balboa Peninsula, the language was Balboa overlay. And it had a whole bunch of technical things in there. It just didn't make sense to the average person. When they tried to shut down Dog Beach, it was a proposal for a memorandum of understanding with the County of Orange. These aren't in English. You can't scan that and know what's going on. I think that somebody coming out and being active and translating that to lay people is what's needed. And I hope that I've done a decent job at filling that role.
Thank you. Next to District 3, Mr. Stokes.
I'll give you a good example of encouraging that next generation. I served on EQUAC, a group of folks from the Newport Harbor students. Thank you guys for telling me to stand up. Appreciate it. Newport Harbor came to EQUAC and said that they wanted to start a ban on styrofoam in our restaurants. What we did was encourage them to do that. Again, then the major stakeholder in the community was the Restaurant Association. It was a real simple buy. Get the Restaurant Association to buy into no styrofoam, move their product to pay another product, and they would have success. So that shows you what the next generation can do, is simply lobby for your cause. And I always encourage someone, if you're ever going to a city council meeting, make sure you stop at your young person's home and tell them to get in the car with you and come to city council and see what fun is.
Thank you. To District 4, Mr. Muldoon.
Well, to piggyback what Tim said, I agree. I actually think this is fun. It may not be fun when you're taking a beating every now and then from a good opponent who's a boxer or someone in the crowd, but it's really enjoyable and it's phenomenal. And I think one thing that could motivate you is when you see that how easy it is to get involved and that you can make a difference. As someone who was eager to get in younger, didn't have the opportunity, now that I'm in a little bit older, I really realize the wisdom of the voters who are older, most of which I'm hoping to vote for me right here tonight. So very wise crowd. So I understand your generation wants to get involved and have changes, can maybe like the way things are going, but there's also a lot of wisdom they could provide you, and the world's your oyster, and this is a great way to do so.
Unfortunately, I think we're losing a generation to be involved in politics. You just have to see what's going on in our country. When you're innocent, when you're guilty before you're proven innocent. The acrimonious behavior in our government in Washington would turn me off, much less turn an 18-year-old off. I also think, you know what? Remember when we used to have the LA Times, almost everybody in town read it, or the Register? No one reads. The young people don't read the newspapers anymore. Don't get the in-depth that you need from a newspaper, not from Yahoo News or AOL News. I'll tell you, spread the word. This is the greatest country. We have a constitution that's better than anybody in this world. Spread the news and get involved.
Thank you. Now to District 6, Mr. Piotr.
Hey, make America great again. I have to say, regardless as to what you think about our president, he has done more to involve young people in politics than anybody in the last several years. He doesn't mince his words. He says what he thinks. I guess I've been kind of accused of that as well. I think it's important, if you're going to bring people in, don't play political games. Don't say one thing and do another. Say what you're going to do and then do it.
Thank you. Ms. Brenner?
When I decided to run for office, it was partly because of my 5 grandchildren who are in the Newport Mesa schools, and they actually are very interested in politics. I've been amazed. They're more interested in politics than their parents are. Their parents are busy raising kids, working jobs, taking care of all the responsibilities, but these young people, I am very impressed with them, and I think one of the most important things that we can do as voters is that we can make sure that the political machines with all their dirty politics lose. We've got to make sure that their tactics don't work, that their lies, their accusations, that what they put out in those mailers, that we investigate whether that's true or not before we believe it, and we show our kids that we cannot be manipulated by partisan politics. We have to show them that we're interested in solutions, and this particularly is a nonpartisan race. It's important that most of us are Republicans, but it's important that we solve problems in our community.
Thank you. Third question.
Hello, my name is Gianna Fanier, and I'm a senior at Corona Del Mar High School. With a great number of bars, restaurants, and neighborhood gatherings in our area, there is a problem with people driving under the influence, especially during evening hours. My question is, what strategies would you use to prevent this problem?
We'll begin with the District 4 incumbent, Mr. Muldoon.
Well, I've prosecuted hundreds of DUIs as a former DA, and there are a couple things we do already that we can do more of. One is we get state grant funds that go specifically towards our law enforcement doing DUI stops and checks. Two, we can take responsibility, something that I thought that Roy said that I agree with, on being a designated driver or paying for someone's Uber or saying, hey, you've got to take an Uber. It's even less excusable now. It was never excusable then, but it's even less excusable now. It's so easy to get a ride share, and I think that between the law enforcement and the community, we should be able to reduce these numbers. Unfortunately, it's not a crime that's really going away. Maybe it doesn't go away to have driverless cars, which you guys helped bring with your generation, but it's a serious issue, and I think continuing enforcement and community what's going to solve it.
Thank you.
This is a first. I agree 100% with Kevin. That's my comments. There's no more to add.
We will now go to District 6, Mr. Piotr.
You know, one of the things that we did the first year that I was on council, and I voted against it, was we added 3, actually with a sergeant, 4 officers for the peninsula. And I was involved with some of the bar owners as far as discussing the needs. And of course, they hate the fact that some of them felt picked on, right? The cops would park outside their bar. And we had a couple of egregious bar owners that just were not doing a good job. And one of the things that has happened through Councilwoman Dixon with these extra officers, and it's brought me around that I think it's been a very, very successful project, is they meet with the bar owners, and if you can sit there and train those bartenders on when not to serve, and obviously it hits their bottom line, but they are much better neighbors that way, and you end up with fewer DUIs and fewer drunks out there on the road. And that partnership that's gone on between the police officers and the bar owners has been very successful down there, and I'd like to see it continue.
And I actually agree with Scott on that we need to do more citizen involvement with our establishments, and we need to do more with our establishments that serve liquor so that they really understand the significance of their actions. And I think we can utilize maybe our young people in this way to help them to, when they're going to these places, to talk to these people about they really do need to be the first line of defense that we have. And we need to make sure that we don't subsidize these establishments, and when they are our primary donors to our campaigns, we don't give them special treatment, which has happened in my opponent's case.
Thank you. Now to District 1, Ms. Dixon.
Thank you. As been mentioned, when I ran in 2014 and had quickly looked at the crime rates, DUI, drug and alcohol incidents in the peninsula in District 1, it quickly became apparent that there were at least 2 causes. One, we had lack of police because 8 officers, our head count had been eliminated, so the council passed on my recommendation to add 4 additional police officers. I might add that my opponent criticized me for years that we added 4 police officers on the peninsula, but the residents and the tavern owners actually support what I've done. For the last 4 years, we've met quarterly with the bar owners, the tavern owners, and the police and the residents in small group discussion, so everyone is exchanging information. The bar owners feel that they are being worked on because they train their patrons. They train their workers so that they do not overserve their patrons, and that is really fundamental. No bar owner in Newport Beach wants to have the police outside their door. They want to work with the police, and we have a really good cooperative relationship, and I'm very pleased about that.
Thank you. On to Mr. Glenn.
Hi, Mike Glenn. Yeah, I did object to that. We were in the middle of the lowest crime year in Newport Beach's history, and we were talking about adding more police. Now, there was certainly a problem, but that was a problem that I addressed with the individual bar owners. In fact, I got all of the bar owners on the peninsula organized and created an application to allow all of the bars to communicate with each other. If there was somebody that was overserved and they were tossed out of a bar, so overserved that they no longer wanted to take their money, then that's something that the other bars should look at. So now we have a system where the bars can communicate with each other. When one person exits involuntarily, none of the other bars let them in. That has caused a drastic decline in DUIs, as well as, and what I would do is I would get rid of the trolley. The trolley only operates on weekends, and it put out of business the Downtowner, which was a free ride system on the peninsula that operated 7 days a week. That really helped eliminate a lot of DUIs as well. But I agree with, I believe it was Kevin that said that the Uber, the Lyft, those are much more easily accessed today than ever before, and I think those have helped tremendously statewide.
Mr. Stokes.
I think I'm going to answer my question to a young perspective. My daughter's 21. What I did was sit down and talk to her about the ramifications of drinking and driving. I was a parent. I had the responsibility of making sure she understood the ramifications of what a DUI would do to her life. Not be employable, thousands of dollars worth of lawyers' fees, those type of things, and then the fact that she could get killed or she could kill someone else. So I think being a parent, I'm sure maybe your parents talk to you about this, and it changes your life when you get those types of parenting and you understand the ramifications. It's simpler to do. So that's how I would approach it as a teaching younger folks about DUI and the consequences of it.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes.
Hello, everyone. My name's Maggie Peach. I'm a senior at Corona Del Mar High School. My question is, as a city council member, how would you seek to bring about greater gender parity in our local government?
We will start with the District 3 challenger, Mr. Stokes.
Sure. As a city council member, how would you seek to bring about greater gender parity in our local government?
I always think my gender is inferior to the other, so I'm good with that. I'll stick with that. I think a diversification of gender is it matches with the population in which we live. So serving those types of having people serve on committees and those types of things as council, that just gives it it assures your answers, it assures your governance that you are meeting the residents, you're meeting the population and those types of things. So it's just an assurance, in my opinion, that you're matching up with what the community wants.
Thank you. District 4, Mr. Engelbrecht.
Certainly, I would get with the city's human resource department to make sure there was no inequity in salaries, female or male. It's 2018. You do a job, you get paid for that job, what that job description is, what that pay scale is, and we should be blind to whether it's a male or female. We're all equal.
Thank you. Mr. Muldoon.
Yeah, so my mother went to law school. One of my examples I followed, she was top of her class. She hated it so much she dropped out of the first year. She's a better person than I am, but I stuck with it. But I believe in it. We've hired a city manager, the first female city manager, I believe, in the history of the city. I'm looking at the history buffs over here. So amazing woman with impeccable records who has time still for her family, and is a great resource for us. So I think just treating everyone with love and respect is the way to do it. And then really gender shouldn't matter, just all human beings.
Thank you. To District 6, Ms. Brenner.
I don't think in our city staff we've had a problem with that. Dave Kiff was rather blind as to that subject. He hired people for their qualities and for their ability to work within the city. As far as our boards and commissions and our council goes, that has not been true, and I appreciate Diane, who has made a real effort to get more women to apply for our boards and commissions, and I'm doing my part. I'm trying to add another woman to the city council, so that's the best I can do.
Thank you. Mr. Piotr?
The city council makes 2 appointments to different committees personally. One of them is the finance committee if you're not on the committee, and the other is the airport working group or the aviation committee. And I appointed women to both of those spots, the only women that were appointed to those spots. We've got a woman city manager. I think there's a lot of talented women in this city, and I look forward to appointing and working with more of them.
Thank you. District 1, Mr. Glenn.
Yeah, I have to agree with pretty much everybody up here. I think that as far as the city employees are concerned, we're doing a great job with the commissions and with the committees. There's some work to do. There's some serious work to do. I mean, I have asked around and been asked, why aren't these women not being appointed to committees? We've done a good job of getting more in, but for instance, this person with that bulldozed the beach, he was a male, and there were 6 people that applied that were female, that were fully qualified. Those are the types of things that kind of slip through when positions become politicized. If we really looked at qualifications, I think we would do a much better job.
Thank you. Ms.
All
Dixon?
right, thank you. Yes, as been mentioned, I'm very proud of one of my major goals when I ran and soon was elected and realized the paucity of women on our boards and commissions. So Women in Newport Networking, WIN, was created. I encouraged other women who have served on boards and commissions presently and in the past, and they worked with me to how to cultivate their own networks, because in this community, we are a tremendously generous community with volunteer activities, and many, many, many women serve in leadership positions on nonprofit boards. My goal is to encourage that same leadership capability and quality to apply to serve in public service in our council boards and commissions. We have wonderful boards and commissions that are policy making and deeply engaged in your community. And the women out here and who are listening to me, I've said this so many times, if you're involved on a nonprofit board, please get involved in your community, because you have the leadership skills and the knowledge. You do not have to be a subject matter expert. You just have to care about your community in a fundamental way, and that will change. And when I ran for city council, I was the only woman. I have been the only woman on the city council for the last 4 years.
For the next question, as a city council member, are you satisfied with the existing measures taken to improve school security in the city? Why are you satisfied? If you are not, how would you aim to continue improving school security? We will begin with District 6, Mr. Piotr. As a city council member, are you satisfied with the existing measures taken to improve school security in the city? Why are you satisfied? If you are not, how would you aim to continue improving school security?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear up here because the speakers are facing that way, and we're not getting that benefit. School security, we have this year appointed a school resource officer for each high school, whereas before they were sharing high schools. And this is in an era when we've had these school shootings. And so we made it a priority. We increased that cost and brought school resource officers into the additional schools. Just last night at the city council meeting, we approved 3 new crossing guards to help in some of the pedestrian crossings, just to make it safer from a pure traffic standpoint. We are very conscious of our future leaders in our country, in our city, in the high schools. I have a couple CDM graduates, and we look forward to continuing that.
Thank you. Ms. Brenner?
At last night's city council meeting, there was a lady there who said that she has been for 4 years trying to get crossing guards near Corona Del Mar High School and has not had any luck doing that. So even though they appointed more for Newport Harbor High School, getting them at CDM has been very difficult. I know this is something that we have to work on, but we have to work collaboratively with the school board. We have to work very closely with them. I am a grandmother of 5 children in Newport Mesa schools, and I can never think that we're doing enough for school safety. I think we need to do as much as we possibly can, because that is a big source of concern for parents when they send their children to school these days. Are they going to come home safely?
Thank you. Now from District 1, Ms. Dixon.
Well, yes, public safety, community safety, the safety of our children is the greatest priority we have. As Mr. Piotr just mentioned, we have added, supplemented, as a result of the killings across the country, to make sure that we are working with the Newport Mesa School District to make sure we are adequately providing the safety and security measures for our young people, for our students. And I think it's still going to be an ongoing issue. We still constantly have to look at the need, and the traffic crossing guards was important. There's just, we can never be too safe, and we always have to be evaluating what we need. The greatest thing about addressing the safety needs at our schools, it is really coming from the parents and our neighborhoods, and they have been so effective to communicate to the council and say, we need this, and we, I believe, have responded. As I say, we can never do enough. We'll continue to augment that as we identify the areas of need, but I'm very pleased that now both high schools have that school resource officer, and that's very critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Glenn.
Hi, Mike Glenn. Yeah, schools are critically important to our community, particularly the safety of our schools. We've got a pretty bad heroin problem going on in our schools that everybody seems reluctant to address. But the numbers are there, and we need to dedicate resources to them. One of the reasons why I'm in favor of allowing dispensaries is because I don't think that mobile dispensaries, not neon lights and that thing, is because I don't think we ought to be spending police resources to go out and arrest an 80-year-old guy that's cancer-stricken that's using marijuana. We can use those to attack the people that are really in our schools with very hard drugs that are dangerous to our students, to our children. And I think that we're on the right track with that. I think that we can allocate some better resources to that through those types of changes. But I'm happy that we have the people in there that are in there right now, but I think that we could do better.
Thank you. Now from District 3, Mr. Stokes.
I think it's more than resource officers. I think, in fact, I serve on the Newport Harbor Educational Foundation, and we funded additional psychologists to be in the school. It's understanding the kids before they become a problem, before the resource officer has to be used. It's getting their confidence. It's understanding what problems are today with our young adults and our high school students and stuff. So it's getting to those challenges first. You can add more layers of police and crossing guards and those resources, but it's really getting down to what are kids thinking about? Why are they doing the things that they do? So I think that's more than safety, is understanding their needs.
Thank you. For District 4, Mr. Muldoon.
Thank you, and I'm supposed to have dinner with the in-laws, so I was gonna leave at 8. It's kind of pushing. I don't know how much more time we have set for this. Not that it's you guys are moderating it. It's very important. It's never enough. I would love to ask you, do you feel safe in the schools? It's kind of a rhetorical question, but it's very important how you feel. It was a no-brainer for us to approve sharing these resources for a sworn peace officer, on campus. A good friend of mine is Vlad Anderson, who unfortunately retired from Newport Beach Police Department, but he was always a Corona Del Mar. You may have known him. And he worked on having personal relationships with all the children, because it's not just safety from the outside, safety from the inside. Many children are dealing with a lot of serious issues at home, abuse, neglect, and they carry those issues. And so I think school bullying is related as well. And so being good to your peers and having law enforcement be there to also protect you, I think is very important to the future of the country.
Thank you. Mr. Engelbrecht.
This was a serious issue to me, and I thought about it, and I said, I think I have a solution. So I took the time to go to a Newport Mesa school board meeting and stand up in there and say, you're going to build a $9 or $10 million football stadium at Corona Del Mar High School. If you took that $9 or $10 million stadium and took the funds to build that, you could then put 3 officers at every school in our community to protect our community. What's more valuable, a football stadium or young lives?
We have two more questions. The next question regards the environment. With regard to preserving and maintaining of our local environment, what environmental issues do you identify as most immediately problematic in our city? Who will you work with to maintain a healthy environment in Newport Beach? We will start with District 3 incumbent, or District 3 challenger, Mr. Stokes.
Gosh, you guys, we're tired. We've been on this road for a while, so sorry for standing up. I think our biggest resource is our natural heritage, which is the Back Bay. We constantly get inflood of upstream trash and debris and fertilizer, those types of things. That's what most concerns me, is our upstream partners with additional cities that flow into our Back Bay. So I think as a natural resource, it's one of the reasons that Newport Beach has a character that it has. So that's one of the most important things, as well as airport noise and pollution. The planes that fly over our heads are distributing this black soot over our community. We're trying to use a different method of hire earlier for the departure patterns, so to get that pollution, which distributes throughout a better distribution at a higher turbulent level. So those are the issues that I would attack.
Thank you. Now to District 4, Mr. Muldoon.
Thank you. Well, first off, I know they're not supporting me, but genuine thank you to SPON. This group has put so much time and energy improving water quality and really health safety in the harbor, because you can get infections and bacteria. I think the runoff is a great answer, Tim. I think the runoff is a big issue. Other communities, inadvertently or intentionally toss stuff in the drain. It comes down the Back Bay. It builds up the level of the Back Bay so that we have to dredge some more, and it causes a lot of pollution. You can see styrofoam and cups all throughout the Back Bay loop, and it's really heartbreaking. So the water wheel is something I'm proud that we're implementing. It really also was a no-brainer as well. The water wheel essentially is a Baltimore concept that gathers the runoff trash that comes into creeks before it gets to the main waterway or the ocean, in our case. The city of Baltimore has had great success with it. It catches all the trash off the surface of the water. Someone comes by and empties it occasionally, and it stops a lot of pollution. So I think the tangible pollution is important. I also think the intangible pollution that groups like SPON have been working on getting rid of, like bacteria and toxins, is very important.
Thank you. Mr. Engelbrecht.
You know what I would do? I would go to the Newport Mesa School District, and I would ask if they would require every class in our school district to have a field trip, the Environmental Nature Center and the Back Bay Nature Center, so that our young people would learn about nature and the environment. We all know it, but we need to educate and give knowledge to our 5-year-olds, our 10-year-olds, so they appreciate everything they see. And if you've all been to those centers, they are wonderful educational tools.
Thank you. District 6, Mr. Piotr.
So you heard a little bit about the water wheel. We just approved that last night at the City Council, and that is now authorized to construct. We had a $1.6 million grant to do that. That's great. One of the other things that's being done, our Water Quality Committee is more aware of it, and you may not be aware of it, is that IRWD is next to the San Diego Creek, which is the main influx of the water and debris and silt and sand, everything that comes downstream. And during low flow situations, which is 11 plus months out of the year, they divert the water into their wetlands, and it ends up being filtered through there, and they put it back out. And our moss, our algae levels, and the nitrates have gone down significantly in the last 20 years that that's been in place. We need to expand that. And the last thing, which really hasn't been addressed yet, is the dredging that was done 5-6 years ago was done in the Upper Bay. We need to dredge the harbor, and as you create more water coming in and out of the harbor, the water quality goes up, and that'll improve the environment of the bay.
On environmental issues, I actually think our local students are pretty aware of that. They live in an environment where they're so aware of the beauty around us and what we have to live with. So I think an education project where we actually get out to more visitors on the beach, people from other areas, especially the children, and perhaps we could do handouts so that they see the pictures of the sea animals that are strangling in the plastic and that sort of thing, that we could probably do something there. But one of the things I'm most encouraged by is last night at the council meeting, they approved a test park to eliminate Roundup. And I think there's plenty of statistics that show that beautiful parks and beautiful nature can be enhanced by natural products, and we can get Roundup out of every one of our city facilities and our city parks, because the evidence is conclusive that that product is really harming our children and our population.
Thank you. District 1, Ms. Dixon.
Yes, thank you. We recently did an economic study, and our harbor contributes economically almost $1 billion to the city of Newport Beach and to the businesses in Newport Beach, not to our coffers, but to all of the businesses that depend on the 11 million visitors who come to our city. And where do they go? They go to our beaches. So having clean water in our harbor, in our back bay, on our ocean front, clean beaches, that is absolutely vital to protect those natural resources, to protect our natural resources and ensure that they exist for years to come, because they are so economically important. The water quality issue is fundamental. I chaired the Water Quality Committee for 2 years, and another example of citizens who are passionate, who have spent decades working with the city and working with the city council and participating on our Water Quality Committee, that came up with the idea for the water wheel, actually when I was chairing the Water Quality Committee, and to improve the bacteria counts in our back bay. It's a never-ending process. Air pollution with the jets is something we're also working on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glenn?
Hi, Mike Glenn. Yeah, water, land, air, we've got it all. We've got, in the last 4 years, we've increased the volume of flights coming out of John Wayne. We've increased the frequency of flights, and we've increased the flight patterns. Those are all things that really affect everybody, really. The water wheel, I like in concept. I know the initial approval was kind of rushed in without any specs. I have yet to delve into exactly what it is going to accomplish and how well it's going to accomplish it, but I like it in concept. And ocbeachinfo.com monitors our water once a week, which is a great resource, especially after a rain, to find out how our beaches are doing with all the wash-off. One thing that I would like to see done is our grates I'm a nervous public speaker. Our grates for their drainage system on the streets. I'd like to see actual grates put into there. Right now, when it rains, it just washes whatever is in the street straight into the bay. We can put grates there to stop that trash before it gets into the bay. I think that's a very inexpensive and effective thing to do.
Thank you. We now have a question from the audience. What is your position on sanctuary cities? We will start with District 1, Mr. Glenn.
I think the cities should be able to decide for themselves what they would like to do.
Thank you. Ms. Dixon?
Actually, I agree with my opponent. The city council did a vote on this to allow the city to protect its own rights and to enforce and work with the federal government if need be on crime and people who are here committing crimes in our community. So we have endorsed that position to allow ourselves not to be a sanctuary city. Thank you.
Thank you. For District 3, Mr. Stokes?
I also agree that the city decides that. I would work with the federal level, follow the laws and the governance of the land of the United States.
Thank you. For District 4, Mr. Engelbrecht?
We have laws in our land. We will obey those laws. We will not be a sanctuary city.
Thank you. Mr. Muldoon?
Thank you. We were told the portion would be done by 8:15, so I'm going to have to spin off in a couple. But thank you so much for doing this. I don't know if your friends are going to think it's cool or not. I think it's cool that you're doing this. Yes, I supported what a lot of Orange County cities are doing, which is saying, look, we just want to cooperate with the federal agencies when it comes to someone who's committed a crime. And this is what was done under Clinton, Bush, and Obama. This is not something radical. I think some of the stuff Sacramento's doing is just reactionary to the president, and it's not logical. And this benefits no one more than the communities who suffer from those individuals who are released back into them. So I'm anti-sanctuary city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. From District 6, Ms. Brenner.
I think this is a politicized issue that actually has very little to do with Newport Beach. I support the laws as they exist, and I think we have to abide by those.
Thank you. Mr. Piotr.
Yeah, I did a survey on my website before this issue even came up, and it came back about 98% against sanctuary cities. The City Council has authorized and has filed an amicus brief to join the federal lawsuit against the state to stop sanctuary cities. Unfortunately, Joy Brenner opposed that, sent me an email saying we shouldn't be doing that. But I definitely think we should be anti-sanctuary city and should do something about it.
Thank you, Mr. Piotr. We will now introduce Measure T. We are giving some time to Mr. Keith Curry to speak on the issue. As you all may know, we will now, Measure T will be on the ballot in November. The measure would require 55% voter approval prior to issuing certificates of participation or lease revenue bonds greater than $50 million. For now, though, we'd like to thank all of our candidates for answering the questions from the audience and from our younger constituents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. When you're a former elected official, I'm sorry, I'll wait. Okay. Thank you very much for staying and listening. This is an important issue, and I appreciate you all being here to talk about Measure T. On June 26th, the City Council passed the largest property tax increase in the city's history since Proposition 13, $4,500 per unit for the units at Uptown Newport, 200 condominiums that are being constructed, and they also authorized $8 million of bonds. They did that to benefit the developer who was building that project. So the council clearly believes in debt without an election and in raising taxes. But at the same council meeting, they put on the ballot a bogus ballot measure mistitled the Taxpayer Protection Act. Now what this really is a sham to allow them to circumvent the campaign spending laws. They did that in 2016. You remember the signs? They were blue signs with gold letters, said vote for Team Newport 2016. It listed the 3 candidates, and in small print said vote yes on MM. It was paid for by the Yes on MM committee, which raised money from the city's tree trimmer, who got his contract, by the way, when we rejected the bids, didn't open them, and simply gave him the contract. He put $6,000 in so they could have those signs that had the names of the candidates on them. That's how they circumvent the campaign law. So right there, ask yourself about the honesty and the integrity behind that approach. A couple of days later, Bob Rush filed bogus arguments in opposition to Measure TT. Bob Rush is a friend of Scott Piotr. He's a strong supporter of Scott Piotr. He claimed it didn't go far enough. Well, here's the deal. He claimed to have a bona fide committee. The person who wrote the law about what a bona fide committee is was our own state senator, John Morlock. This is what he says. Newporters for Ethical Government does not appear to meet the substance of a bona fide association of citizens. I'm not aware of articles of incorporation, history, or prior accomplishments. Accordingly, it does not appear to meet the criteria established by either the letter or the spirit of the law. It was a bogus committee. And how do you know it was bogus? Because neither side bothered to file rebuttal arguments against each other like legitimate opponents do. I mean, really, how could they file rebuttal arguments against each other? Because 5 of the statements in Bob Rush's argument are identical, or nearly identical, to the arguments in Scott Piotr's argument. They're simply trying to cheat the public. So stop right there and ask yourself, what does this tell you about the honesty and the integrity of the people behind this ballot measure? Now let's look at the specifics of the measure itself. It's called the Taxpayer Protection Act, but it does nothing on taxes. The state constitution and the city charter already require an election where you have bonds with taxes. We would be the only jurisdiction in America and the only jurisdiction in the history of America, 10,000 cities, over 1 million council people, over 242 years, to adopt this restriction. This idea came from the mind of Scott Piotr. It was not supported by staff. It was not supported by the Finance Committee. It was not supported by our financial advisors. It's not recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association. It's just a cynical political ploy to allow them to cheat. Now, the most likely project, they didn't know this until they saw the staff report, is seawalls. Seawalls are a critically important project to a small group of people, and that's the project most likely to require an election. Now, they say they've got loopholes in this law, but before any responsible bond counsel would let them sell debt, they would require them to go to court in a lengthy and expensive validation action. We'll have to go to the voters without good bids because the bids will expire because there's too much time between getting bids and going to the voters. The elections themselves would cost $325,000 or more to put it on the ballot. Politics will be played as 4 councilmen decide our project's going to be funded with cash, yours is going to be funded with debt if you're in the minority, and it may very well be the project in your neighborhood. They say it circumvents Proposition 13, but in fact, lease debt has been allowed without an election since 1942 in California, long before Proposition 13. They say in your handout that the author of Proposition 13 supports this. Well, I knew Paul Gann, and I worked with Howard Jarvis. They've been dead for 30 years, so they have not endorsed this. And Jonathan Capel, who they quote, was in high school at the time Proposition 13 was passed. This is all about cheating. They don't care about your opinions. We saw that with the Museum House. They don't care about debt for elections. We saw that because at the same meeting, they approved debt and they approved taxes without an election. So join Gene Watt and Mike Hinn and me. Don't buy the sham and vote no on Proposition T. Thank you for listening tonight.
I'm sorry, we were backstage taking care of some final business. But first of all, how about the students? What do you think? Thank you so much. You guys did an absolutely awesome job. Sajada, I'm so sorry, I keep doing that, and Peter, and as well as Maggie and Gia and Ethan, and we're missing one right now, but Asher, sorry. Thank you so much, you guys. And Laura Mayberry, where is she? Laura, come up here. We'd like to say thank you.
Thank you all so much for having us. This was a pleasure to be able to participate in the forum, and we had a great time preparing and being able to interact with the candidates. So thank you all so much for having us.
Thank you. This is an opportunity that I will remember being able to host this political forum. Thank you.
It was truly great to have them. I would also like to say a big thanks to the candidates. This is a grueling thing to go through, and I don't envy their position, but they stuck with it, and we did get the majority of them here. I'd just like to, and also to Keith on Measure T, thank you very much. I'd just like to also say that our next board meeting is October 18th. All members are invited to attend. We have upcoming topics that we're trying to work on at the moment. One of those is a parking study that was released in Corona del Mar recently, and we will be talking about that in the business district of Corona del Mar. Undergrounding of utilities has been brought up as something that people want to see what that would take. We're trying to work on a meeting to discuss that. And then finally, also trying to follow up on the crime and safety meeting that we had about a month ago. There was an awful lot of response to that meeting, and so we want to follow up on that. I have one quote that I just heard that I'd like to close with, and I thought it was just so appropriate, especially for our high school students. Not voting is like letting your grandma pick out your clothes. No offense to grandma, but when you don't vote, that's what you're doing. You're letting other people make some really key decisions about your life. So use that privilege that we have in voting and go do it. Thank you so much for attending. Really appreciate it.